My name is Sigríður Bylgja. I am the founder and manager of a project called The Tree of Life, or Tré Lífsins in Icelandic. It just started out as an idea, and I've been working on it for the past 6 years. What we are planning to do and are coming closer to bringing into reality every day is that we are going to build a new crematorium in Iceland. We only have one currently. So we want to build the one that would replace it, and we want to offer the people to have more agency over their end-of-life choices. So we're going to offer people the option of burying their remains in an urn along with a tree in a memory garden. So we will not have the traditional cemetery. This will be not connected to any religion or non-denominational. So the memory gardens will just grow up as natural forests with a personal touch to it, where people have chosen the tree that they want to grow into or become. Well, that's one part of my project, and then the other part which developed from it is the Book of Life. So to have the Tree of Life as an independent entity and have the Book of Life as an independent one, but eventually when both will be up and ready, they'll work finally together. In the Book of Life, people can register their life's story while it is still happening. So you can register whatever your life story is going to bring you and do it just in real time. It's private, it's closed, it's like a social media for one. You're putting down your legacy. Because when you pass away, this information bank, where you have collected data and stories about your life, will be handed over to loved ones that you have chosen. So they will have your legacy, and also you will be able to write your final wishes. So they will know if you would like to be cremated and have your urns planted with a tree in the memory gardens of Tree of Life. The agency and the choice is yours. It's your life, and we need more options. I'm talking about the context in Iceland, because in Iceland you can't die without touching base with just one religious community. Because we have the national church, we don't have a separation of the state and the church. So the church runs all of the cemeteries. They are individual entities under the church. So they are blessed. All of the ground is blessed before a cemetery is opened. Their names are even Kirkjugarður, which in Icelandic is church garden. So imagine if you're an atheist or have any other religion than Christianity, you wouldn't feel really welcome. And then the crematorium is also run by the cemeteries or the church gardens.
Wasn't there a pagan organization?
Yeah, and it's growing larger. And also we have the Humanist Association. They don't have any other options. Either to have a cremation, and you can distribute the ashes over the ocean or in the highlands, but you have to get a special permit. But if you don't choose a cremation, which is taking place within the only crematorium which is run by the cemeteries, then you will have to bury in a cemetery. There are spots in one cemetery here in Grafarvogur that have been reserved for Islam and pagans, but they haven't really been using them. So it's still within a cemetery.
Right.
So that is the box we're working with.
That's super interesting. In the US, the laws aren't so strict.
No.
Yeah, I'm curious how this compared to other countries.
I have done research here in Iceland and in the States as well. Because first, when I got the idea, all I wanted was for people to be able to plant a tree with their ashes, to have another option. My background is in environmental studies, human ecology, so the relationship between humans and nature. And like the discourse around sustainability and sustainability issues. When I started looking at this to begin with, I just wanted people to be able to plant their ashes with a tree. Or the way I looked at it was I wanted them to be able to become a tree. For me, it's so important for us to understand that we are a part of nature, because that has really been taken away from us in these modern times. It's more looked at that the humankind is the ruler of nature, maybe because we're less dependent on it. Well, we aren't.
We think
but
we are.
we think we are, exactly, yeah. So I wanted to, the modern society kind of goes on like in this complete impermanence. It's like no one, we live like we're never gonna die, and we don't make any plans, and we don't see that some things have an ending. Like with sustainability, our planet that we live on is a finite resource, but still we live in an economy that doesn't recognize that.
Yeah.
It's just endless growth, make more money, do more things, create, not even create, just produce more junk.
Yeah, for a short-term goal.
Exactly. That's not good. And I thought that maybe if we would look at ourselves more as a part of nature, we'd be able to figure out that we can't go on like this forever. So in a way, Tree of Life is my own radicalism, because I got pretty hopeless around the system that we live in. And that goes back to my studies and my background, where I'm coming from. Iceland is a pretty green country, if you look at it in comparison worldwide. And when I was a child, nature was a big part of me and my like image of myself. And I didn't realize how like bad the situation of the world was becoming, because I just saw that we lived in this beautiful country. There weren't really any debates about any pollutants, and we didn't live next to a really polluting site or anything like many people do around the world. And when I did my bachelor's in philosophy, politics and economics. So a really interesting combination. And I started my studies in the year 2008, in September. And in October 2008, the Icelandic financial system and banking system collapsed completely. So we were just students sitting in class at that time, studying philosophy, politics and economics, just doing these basic courses, and we were like, this is not supposed to be possible for this to happen. But it did, and I think that kind of changed my perception overall at how I look at systems, because they are man-made, and that means that they can be changed. That's with regard to the patriarchy and capitalism and all of these big things that are harmful for us and that we need to change. In one of the courses that I did in my bachelor studies, we had environmental politics. And that's where I first realized that the situation in the world is maybe not that good. And I did a trip after my bachelor studies where I traveled Southeast Asia. In some places I was living with locals. We were really like backpackers, but trying to experience as much of the culture as we could. So not consuming it, kind of. Definitely we did. But we were trying to be mindful about it. And these 5 months really changed the way I saw the world. Because it was shocking for me, like a 23-year-old, traveling there to begin with, to have the ability to do so. And to compare my way of living back home to those people's way of living.
Yeah.
and just seeing all this poverty. You don't really see poverty here in Iceland. I know there is poverty, but it's there. It's hidden.
Yeah, and to a different scale, I imagine. Too.
Yeah, definitely. So just seeing infrastructures, like the waste system, seeing how people lived, seeing the lack of like basic needs that weren't fulfilled. It was shocking, and I just didn't understand how our world could be like that. And it hurt me just to see how bad it was, because I thought we lived in a world where everybody was supposed to be good to each other.
Yeah.
But then there, we basically have a system that benefits only a part of the world, while it takes away from others, especially with regard to environmental matters and the production side of things and globalization. Things are being produced in countries with less income, so we don't have environmental justice or social justice on top of all of the other systems. So this was a big shocker to me, and this was really, we dove quite well into this in my master's studies, which I did in Lund University in Sweden. I did a master's called Human Ecology, with emphasis on culture, power and sustainability. Those studies were, I would say they were quite radical, at least for me, coming from that background. There were so many things that I was learning, and I just felt stupid. I felt really sad and stupid. I was like, how was I able to live up until this age and not know about these things? I was completely in a bubble, and in my studies, that bubble burst with a painful bang. And I was not aware of my privileges. I also went to Belize. I did a part of my internship in Belize in Central America, where an American oil company, they were illegally going into sacred grounds of indigenous peoples. And I was working for an NGO that was protecting the rights of the indigenous people. But the indigenous people, they saw me as an outsider as well. So I wasn't really let in to their communities. But I was able to work with the NGO for some time. Eventually, I went away much sooner than I had planned for, because I didn't feel safe there. The people of the oil company, they were driving a car really slowly behind me on the streets.
Oh my God.
It was like really just threatening or intimidating.
So that's another moment of, I imagine, facing the enormity of the structures and this ingrained nature of these power structures that are really hard to change.
Yeah, and the feeling of hopelessness and lack of power to do something. And then I came to Iceland, and I did a part of my internship here with the largest environmental NGO in Iceland, Landvernd. Then in 2014, I was reading all of the cemeteries in Iceland will be full, especially in the capital area in Reykjavik. I thought, well, isn't this strange that we're still taking these resources that are in the coffins and burying them in the ground? I mean, it takes a long time to degrade, and it just takes up space, and can't we do it in a better way that would be more in sync with nature? And I started Googling. And I found a company in the States called Bios Urn. I contacted them because I just wanted to import their urns for people to be able to buy them and plant their ashes in their organic urns with a seed that a tree would grow from.
I love that it's portable. That makes so much sense.
I know.
And the fact that if the tree dies, you can plant another one.
We had some discussions, and I soon found out that this is not legal in Iceland. Number one, it's not legal to plant a tree with ashes wherever you want to. And number two, it's not allowed to plant a tree in cemeteries. And then number three, it's not possible due to the regulations we have, because according to the regulations, an urn must be put down at like 1 meter depth. No seed is going to grow from that. And then we have a pretty cold climate here in Iceland. So I thought, like, this is not going to work. There was something that kept me working with this idea, though. And as I started to read more about the laws and regulations around dying or what we can do with bodies in Iceland, I started to see like this is really strange how things are here. And I felt the need to change it or affect it. So that's, long story short, how the development of the Tree of Life started.
Are you able to find out what the source of these laws are? Because they seem so specific to this place.
No, I don't know why. But I've been in contact with the Ministry of Justice, which handles these matters in Iceland. And they want me to come in for a meeting because these laws and regulations, well, regarding cremation, were basically built around the only crematorium that is here. But I don't know, I mean, with when you're digging a regular grave in a cemetery, you have to have 2 meters of soil on top of the coffin. And then for the cremations, the urn has to go down to 1 meter. I don't know where it comes from. That's an interesting
So you can't
question.
keep the urn in your house?
No, you're not allowed. So what you're allowed to do, if you choose a cremation in Iceland, you're allowed to either bury the urn with the ashes in a cemetery, or you can apply for a special permit, and then you're only allowed to distribute the ashes over the ocean or in the highlands. We want to offer the option where people can have the urn planted along with a tree. So a tree like this big,
Okay.
that has already been growing. So it's not a seed. So we'll be able to put the urn at the bottom of the 1 meter grave. Then we'll put some soil with it, and then like a teenage tree goes on top of it. And we are in cooperation with the forestry of Iceland. They're going to help to prepare the land for the first memory garden. And according to the laws and regulations in Iceland, it has to be a specific garden.
So you're starting with trying to fit this idea into the existing laws with the hope that eventually you can change the law?
That would be great, but it would just also be great if we can make it fit within this system so people have an alternative. But of course the best thing would be that people could just do whatever they wanted to do. It's hard to take ideas from entrepreneurs. I didn't even look at myself as an entrepreneur for a long time. This is innovation, this is social innovation. It's hard to take innovation and try to make it fit within old systems, because systems usually work in a way that they want to keep themselves alive.
And they don't like to be challenged.
They don't like it. And then you have people working within these systems because they're just working within a system, and it's like, no, we don't have any examples of this or anything like this. I've had to push it for a long time and be really constant, like constantly checking up, constantly being in contact with the ministry and with all of these different people that belong to that system to be able to get this idea through.
It is radical, just that approach of trying to change a system from within.
Yeah, I found loopholes within the laws, and I've been using them to be able to get my case further. We are able to build 1,500 square meters building that's going to be both a crematorium, but it's also going to be a non-denominational space for ceremonies. Because in Iceland, when people pass away, funerals are just held in churches. If they're not held in churches, there aren't any beautiful spaces. You can rent some spaces, but that's also a space that you could rent for a work party. So through the development of my project, I've seen that there is a need that has to be fulfilled, because people that are non-religious or are humanists or patrons or whatever, they are missing this sacred space to be able to give their last farewell to a loved one. So we want our house to be open to all. And if people are Christian, they can have their farewell ceremony at Tree of Life as well. They would just have to ask their priest to come in. So we want to be this neutral space where we still have this sacredness of ceremonies. And people can have a farewell ceremony like a funeral, or you can have a celebration like a wedding or a baptism, or a name giving for the Humanist Association. But those are ceremonies that have traditionally been held in churches. But since our society is becoming more and more beautiful with all of the intercultural mixing, and we are getting new Icelanders in, we have people from different backgrounds, different religions and cultures, and we need a place that like celebrates them all, where they don't come into a space and it's just connected to any one religion.
I can't not see your work as very activist, actually, in that you're like, okay, we just need to make some separations between all of these things and give people space to do what they want.
That's the most important thing. We need to have space for all. We need to be inviting. It just so frustrates me that we're always focusing on the differences instead of what we all have in common. We're all born, we're all gonna die. Those are just two basic things. Whatever happens in between, in this lifespan that we have, we don't know, but we have the opportunity to write our own story. So that's the approach that I have for the Book of Life. How do you want your story to be? And essentially, how can you enjoy your life the most? Because if you are aware that at one point you're going to die, you might want to live your life more fully or in more gratitude and like putting into practice what seems to be lacking in the world. And then for the Tree of Life, for us to see that, if we're trees, you can't see the differences, even if we're different species. And trees are all connected through the root system. So for us to become trees after we pass away, after a cremation, for our ashes to be the nourishment for that tree, is for me just a beautiful thing that is not going to be dividing for us, but much rather that it's going to unite us. And also the relationship between trees and humans, because we provide them what they need to live and they provide us what we need to live, both in terms of oxygen and shelter and more ecological diversity, and they bind water in the soil, and they're just really amazing. And wouldn't it be great if we could reforest all of these deforested areas with the people that we love? Well, my evil plan with this is that people will go to the memory gardens and have a personal connection with a tree. And when you go there often to visit, maybe it's your grandmother or your parent that's under the tree, you go there, you visit it, see how it's growing, you begin to develop kind of a more sense for your surroundings, because there are other trees there, personalized trees, growing as well. And when we get to know something, we start to care about it. We start to care for it. So the evil plan is that people will start to love nature more.
Not
starting
at all.
No.
The secret plan.
The secret plan, yeah. It's better to call it a secret plan than an evil plan. Yeah, because all of the trees in the memory gardens are going to be labeled. So in front of each tree there's going to be like, here grows Sigríður Bylgja, and a QR code that leads you to a website where you have my picture and information about my life, and you can write some memorial words. So you can be walking around in the memory garden even if you don't have anyone that you know there. You can just be walking in a forested area or with a lot of plants and go with your smartphone or device like bleep, okay, that person is here. bleep, oh, that person is there.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm walking through cemeteries, I'm always like, what do these people look like? I'm just,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
curious.
Me too. I'm like, what are their stories?
Yeah.
Why did they live for such a short time? Did something happen? And yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool. And like a really interesting use of, I think technology, like using modern technology seems like a big part of this too.
Yeah. And use it in a good way. And it's also, it really comes down to the architecture of the systems and who designs the systems. So I'm fully aware of that, and have been working with people that are within the queer community and women, because women in tech are not that many, and that means that we're going to get a biased system within the tech world also. If we only have one type of people that are one gender between the age of something and something that are making these systems, it's not going to be really diverse. It's not going to be open to all. I have worked with so many people, and I've received encouragement for so many people, and I've been able to seek advice from so many people, and having conversation about life and death, and people sharing these really important stories with me. It's just so precious or valuable, because all of that has also helped me on the way and just helped me to keep the focus, because it's really easy to lose faith in yourself. But then when you have all of these stories and people encouraging you, say, this would have been what my wife wanted, this we would have loved for this to be able to be for our son that we lost when he was 23, and like all of these stories, they just come together. Oh, I get goosebumps. They just come together and keep you going, because this is important. Our lives are important, and so is our last farewell. At the same time, I'm not saying that everyone should choose this option. I mean, I totally respect that each and every one should be able to make their choices based on their standards or based on their belief, based on themselves. So if they want just a traditional burial in a cemetery, that's fine. If they want a cremation but want their ashes to be distributed over the sea, perfect. If they want a cremation and for the ashes to be planted or buried on top of a coffin in a cemetery or in a special spot in a cemetery, that's great. I think I'm just tired of all of this fighting that's been going on for so long. I just think we need a community with more unitedness. And maybe it's a utopia, but I want to do my part in at least contributing to the conversation about it.
That's all you can do, is see what you have to offer and do it. And it seems like you've been so persistent in bringing your idea to this conversation here.